Assalamu alaikum and peace. This is Imam Malik Mujahid, and you're watching Muslim Network TV on Galaxy 19 satellite, Amazon Fire TV, Apple TV, and on Roku. And of course, on our own website, muslimnetwork.tv. Anytime I'm praying, and as you know, Muslim pray 5 times a day, I pray for myself, my parents, my family, but I also pray for my teachers. And sometimes I recall teachers who have been my teachers 60 years ago when I was in the elementary school. And sometimes I think of my teachers who were my teachers at the University of Chicago. Praying for teacher, respecting your teacher, and listening to your teachers is part of Muslim culture. My parents told me, teachers are like parents. You respect them, you listen to them, you always pray for them. And that's how we are raised. But different place and a different culture. I don't know how many students in America pray for their teachers. Is it part of the culture? I was sitting with two of my professors actually on their dining table. They invited me for dinner. And here there was their daughter. And she was so disrespectful, in my view, how she was talking to her parents, that a couple of times I thought I better apologize for leaving and leave the dining table. That's how brutal conversation was, putting down their own parents. So when parents are dealt that way, are teachers that way in any different way? But I carried my respect to the University of Chicago. Once I was in a workshop. It was a lunch workshop. Some distinguished scholar has come, and I really wanted to hear that lecture. So I was early. And all seats were full, but I had a seat. Later on, one of my professor walked in, and there was no place to sit. So he placed himself on a floor. And I had difficult time. I looked here and there and tried to, and eventually I went on the floor. That's how we respect. How teachers are doing, especially in pandemic. I hear teachers are quitting their professions, but why they get into this profession to begin with? We have a whole lot of questions. I hope we will have enough time to talk about all our questions. And with me are 3 amazing people who decided that this is the profession they want to be in. We have Maimona Berta. Welcome to Muslim Network TV, Maimona Berta. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam. Thank you so much for having me.
And we also have Rola, El-Roz. Welcome to Muslim Network TV.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Assalamu alaikum. We're expecting Rabbi Elchanan Poupko, who will be joining us a little later. Maimona Afzal Berta is a special education teacher. As board vice president of Franklin McKinley School District in California, she oversees $100 million budget and keeps an eye on 7,000 students. I wonder how she does that. And Rola, El-Roz, became a teacher after facing a racist comment on the streets. And she's planning to open her own Islamic schools. Tell us why both of you decided to become teachers. Of course, easy answer is Rola heard somebody saying something on the street and she wanted to teach them a lesson and became a teacher. Is that story?
It's not. I wasn't trying to. Well, what happened was I was waiting for a friend and someone came by and said something very inappropriate. They stopped their car and said to me, F your Allah. and they kept honking and just making sure I heard them. So I waved at them, and I smiled. I didn't want to make a scene, so they drove off, and then that, I guess, upset them more. So they turned back around, and they came back. So I got scared, and I hid between two cars, afraid that they're gonna come and come attack me or something. So they honked again, and I looked, and they gave me the finger, and then drove off. So what I realized is that I never hated that person. I was not upset with that person. What I realized is that they've been taught wrong. And I realized that education is the most important thing. And sometimes it's hard to unlearn something. So you got to start teaching it at a young age. And that's when I decided to go into teaching.
So are people watching learning a lesson that you don't confront the hate mongers?
Yeah, I don't. I never got angry with them. We have to understand where they're coming from. I'm not saying, just turn away and let them do it. What I'm saying is there's a reason that they're doing this. Maybe they've seen the media. Maybe they've been raised in a different way to hate a certain group of people. It is still their responsibility to go and learn otherwise. However, in that moment, they don't know any better. And you fighting back and yelling and screaming is sometimes going to just prove their point. So it's best to stay calm and, greet them nicely. And if that person came out and wanted to have a conversation, that would have been wonderful as well.
Well, when it happens to me once, these things continue to happen, but I was coming early morning and came out of the train and taking escalator up the stairs, and I was in rush for a meeting. And on escalator, you stand on the right and you walk on the left. So everybody was following that except one lady. So I requested her to move to the right, which she did. And I came out and I was about to exit the station when she said, "Go back where you came from." I didn't raise my voice, but I came back calmly and told her, "You came first, you leave first." I still regret that moment, but that's what came out. So Maimona Berta, how you decide to become a teacher?
So it's kind of a funny story because I come from a family of educators, both on my mom and my dad's side. And so it was always something that it's a really big shoes to fill, and they're amazing teachers and continue to be in the field of education. And so it was one thing I always said, nope, I'm not going to become a teacher. And I really resisted for a long time. And I think really growing up around great teachers, so I had some amazing teachers when I was in school who really, cultivated a sense of learning, but also this love of learning that made it really exciting. I think one of the big reasons that I decided to go into education is in our community here in the Bay Area of California, specifically in San Jose. I was working volunteering at the public library, and I realized the kind of stark differences in the amount of resources that different communities have and how that impacts the opportunities that they have with learning and just broadening their higher education. And that's when I realized I wanted to be a part of changing that and making sure that every child had the opportunity to learn and access, the rigor that is necessary to be successful in life.
So very thoughtful. Tell us, how long both each one of you have been a teacher?
So I'm in my 8th year of teaching.
If you count tutoring, I've been doing that for a long time, but actual teaching in a classroom, my 5th year.
Okay. So what is the most difficult thing about being a teacher? The reason I ask this question is people think it's an easy job. My couple of my daughters were teachers, and Maimona, one of my daughter, she started by serving to areas where teachers will not go. She was motivated like you, but I saw how much time commitment. My daughters will be absolutely exhausted when they come and they lie down without eating, and then they start preparing. I mean, teaching seems to be not an easy thing to do. I mean, what is the most difficult thing you find while teaching?
For me, I think it's managing both the way that you provide these learning opportunities for students, especially in special education, especially, they're very individualized needs, very individualized instruction. But I think more than that, it's honestly managing a lot of the other roles that you play as a teacher, particularly, working with adults and, some of the systemic issues, or there's a policy that's created and now suddenly it's up to you to implement it, or this new curriculum is adopted and now, suddenly you have to shift gears and prepare and plan for that. So I think it's definitely managing those, all of those responsibilities that then make it kind of this endless job where, before the pandemic, you were preparing in school and getting the classroom ready for the next day, getting the lesson plans ready. And then, then you'd come home and there'd be a whole other list of things that are still needing to be done in order to be ready, and to make sure that, everything's in place for the following school week or for the following day.
In my case, I would say building relationship with your students is the best way to teach them. Based on my experience, the way I saw things, we're not just there to teach a course or a subject. We're teaching them manners, we're teaching them ethics, we're teaching them character building. And if you have a good relationship with your students, you can reach them when it comes to anything. You can teach them math, you can teach them science, you can teach them all the above that I've listed. So I find that is one of my biggest challenges, is the relationship building.
So do sometimes you feel tired of teaching? And, all of us have our families and responsibilities, and teaching become very taxing. So ever thought about that? Quitting?
I'm not at that point. I never reached that point yet. Maybe because it's only been 5 years for me. I have heard of multiple teachers who have told me that you will reach a point where you burn out, that you feel like you try, and like some parents are not supportive, some parents are, but when you get those unsupportive parents, or when you're in a situation where you're with an unsupportive administration, that's where I feel like people start to feel like they're burning out. And there's no one there to take a toll off of you, take something off your shoulders.
Maimona, tell us, what was your journey from being just a teacher to becoming working at the board level, which has probably many, many schools? Do you still teach and do that, or you have left teaching and focusing on those aspects?
I do both. So my day job, as I call it, is teaching, and then the job. Well, I guess they both take up, a significant amount of time. But I do currently teach in the classroom, as well as serve on the school board. So I would say my journey to that has been interesting, because I always thought, I was content fully in my classroom of, this is my space, these are my students. We're going to facilitate these learning opportunities, and it's going to be great. And I think some of it was the reaching the burnout point, because you start to learn, what are the things that are working, and what are, especially in special education, that just the amount of paperwork and other responsibilities that you have can be very taxing. But I think what the drawing point for me was my circle of influence, right? In the classroom, I'm able to have that influence on my students, and in that aspect, right? It was actually shortly after the 2016 presidential election where I started experiencing some very targeted and hateful incidents in my public school classroom. And having grown up in the community, it was really shocking to me. I just couldn't believe it. A lot of my students are also, it's a school where 100% of our students qualify for free and reduced lunch. A lot of our students are undocumented. So it's a very high needs community in that sense. And so I was really surprised that this was coming from, students or, others. And on September 11th, my classroom was vandalized. And so for me, it was a matter of realizing that, again, this isn't about the students. I think Rola said that earlier. These aren't about these people. These are about, for me, it was about, we hadn't done a good enough job educating our students, that this should be a safe and inclusive environment for everyone, not just for the teachers. But if students, felt able to do that to a teacher, an adult, then, we could only imagine what they're doing to each other. And so that being having to go through those incidents and realizing that there was a larger systemic issue, a policy issue, and how we chose to respond is what really prompted me to look at, well, who are the individuals at the table? Who's making these decisions? Who's creating these policies and these programs? And how can I be there? What does that look like? So that was a decision I made at that point, to figure out how to get on the school board.
Well, thank you so much. Teaching itself takes time, and at the top of being on that board. But one thing I'm surprised, is you mentioned San Jose, California. I have gone there multiple times and have given sermons at Santa Clara, MCA large mosque there multiple times. And I am surprised to hear that in that area, which is heart of Silicon Valley, you mentioned there are so many undocumented workers and the privileged people who do not have much facilities available. That's very surprising. When I'm driving in those roads, I never noticed those people. So where are they hidden there?
Well, it's a stark economic divide. You look at East San Jose particularly compared to other more affluent areas. And so, I have lots of students who are unhoused. That's a significant population of the students that I work with, and as well as other needs. And so they do exist. Maybe sometimes they get forgotten about or not as recognized, but they do exist. And so I think it's that with education, there's that opportunity to provide this learning experiences, bettering your quality of life ultimately in your future. And so that's what really inspires me to continue serving in this capacity.
You're watching Muslim Network TV. This is Imam Malik Mujahid, and I'm talking with Maimona Berta and Rola El-Roz about being a teacher and challenges of being a teacher. And when we come back, we'll talk about the joy of being a teacher. Welcome back to Muslim Network TV. And we're talking with Maimona Berta and Rola El-Roz about being a teacher. So teacher put in long hours, extraordinary class management and dealing with children and understanding what those children are dealing with in today's society and all that. What are the joys of teaching? Do you are you energized by some of these students and you feel that, hey, this is the right thing to do?
I would say yes. I think it depends on your experience. The one experience I remember is I had a student leave in my mailbox, and they tried to have it anonymous. That because of you, I feel good about myself. Because of you, I can learn. And they just put like hearts and like a little, few signs and like stuff like that. And when I walked into the class, I see like two girls who are very shy and very quiet, which usually they're very talkative and very out there. And I just asked them, like, was that you? And they're like, yeah, how'd you know? They're like, miss, you even know it's us. So that, I think, made my day. I was having a really rough day, a really rough week at that time. And I saw that and I was like, this is completely worth it. When the students actually recognize you and they make you feel like you're a part of their life, you made a difference. And even when parents actually tell you that as well, it's a huge impact on you and very joyful for us.
Yeah, I would say the similar, when you see the students finally making progress or you're working so hard, and finally you see the light bulb go off, that they understood what you were trying to explain. That really just is so validating to know that you're making that difference.
Well, I can tell you, sometime I meet people and they introduce themselves. I'm your daughter's student. I said, wow, really? And then I asked my daughter about them, and they have nothing but praise for each other. So it seems that teachers and students develop a relationship, even in this society, which helps each other keep doing their job, keep learning, and keep teaching. But I have read many stories of teachers nowadays quitting their jobs. It was not only in pandemic, they're concerned about personal safety, but even before that. So why teachers quit? So I asked Professor Google about it, and one of the thing came up because there are not enough bathroom breaks for teachers. Is that true?
I would say that's possibly true in the elementary level. When I was in the high school level, it's a little different. When I was teaching the high school level, when I was a vice principal at an elementary school, I had teachers concerned about that kind of issue, that for them to go to the bathroom, they have to wait for someone to come cover them. And their periods are very close to each other. Their break, they have to sit with the students as well while they're having lunch. In high school, teachers' break is for themselves, right? So they're alone, the kids go do their own thing. The teacher goes to the washroom, does her thing, relaxes, has an hour of a break, has your prep time. However, in elementary, your whole time is for your students. You're pretty much only your prep time is the time you have a break. And then teachers are running back and forth at that time to finish their work. If they're missing anything, they have no time to eat sometimes. So I would say that's one of the reasons. Is a bathroom break. I would say burning out, no support, and sometimes parents play a role. And sometimes it's not. I would say that quitting is because some teachers actually realize it's not for them, which is a good thing. If you feel like teaching is not your niche or something that's for you, then you should not be in that field for that reason. If you went in for the money, or you went in for summer breaks or whatever it may be, you're not really going to get that summer break. You're preparing for next year. The money is not the greatest money. You're not getting paid like a doctor. So a lot of teachers realize that and like, oh, that's not what I signed up for, and which is it's okay. Like if they have a different path. So I would say these are the reasons I would find as why some teachers would quit.
Maimona Berta, since you are in the school board, but do you face this challenge of teachers quitting in your school board?
In the sense of like the burnout, definitely. I don't think any district or any community is immune to that, because it's really truly about monitoring how are we making this a sustainable career for teachers, right? You had mentioned the bathroom breaks. There's days where I have to force myself of leaving a student, which feels very, almost neglectful, in order to take care of my own basic needs. And that's, it follows a similar practice of sometimes you have to put your own oxygen mask on first to be able to help others. So I think it's definitely something that a lot of administrators, a lot of district level leaders are, constantly monitoring. Is with every single thing we ask teachers to do, are we equally making sure that we're removing a responsibility or perhaps providing additional support so that it doesn't feel like it's constantly overwhelming?
What both of you are doing to take care of yourself during the pandemic?
Okay.
I would say, yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's very challenging. I think finding ways to even have like a social time with my colleagues. So we'll sometimes do like a social lunch hour on Zoom, just to be able to replicate, especially our schools are still physically closed. And so being able to have that time to decompress, kind of talk about some of the things that are frustrating, or just to vent even at some point, which sometimes might happen in the coffee room or in the during the lunch break. So I think being able to have those outlets to have discussions and just socialize is also important.
Yeah, in our case, we have in Canada there are some schools that are still open. Some schools have switched online. However, the way I do things is I would do social distance as opposed to an online with colleagues or with actual just friends who we would have topics completely out of the realm of education. Somehow we always go back to it, but we try to stay away from education just to take a breather, think about different things for a while, so we can re-energize and be ready to teach again.
But are all the students, do all the students have proper equipment to connect with the online classes? One place when I called, they're well-to-do middle-class people, but they didn't have enough computers for their children and parents and all that at the same time. So how are you keeping an eye that all students have means, a proper internet and proper equipment to connect for online instruction?
I would say, unfortunately, that's out of our hands. And there was an article about these two young girls, I think they were 8 years old, grade 3, who went to a KFC and sat outside. I'm not sure what state it was, to get Wi-Fi to be able to do their homework. And the owners brought them in and sat with them, and they told them they're more than welcome to come anytime. And the article spoke about how, due to this pandemic, now there's difference between classes due to internet. So some kids are going to have the opportunity to learn while others won't have that. I would say it depends on the school if they're able to provide the Chromebooks or laptops or whatever it may be. However, providing Wi-Fi might be a difficult, or internet might be a difficult thing for the school itself to do.
So, Maimona, how many children in your school district are unable to attend online classes because of the digital divide, which is found right in the heart of Silicon Valley?
Yeah, so thankfully, I'm excited to be able to report that we have, over, I think we're close to 98% attendance, live synchronous instruction attendance through our Zoom platform right now. And that's taken quite a bit of work to be able to get there. It's the devices, being able to, sustain the learning platforms, it's the internet connection, the amount of data that's used for these live Zoom meetings to be able to have that synchronous instruction. And that's been a lot of work in terms of advocacy, because it's like you said, in the Silicon Valley, you imagine this place where there's, resources and tech companies and all of these things happening. So you would imagine that students and families have access to technology. But in reality, you realize that there is a stark divide with those who can even sustain the level of internet connection that they need, or the types of devices that support learning. And so there was quite a bit of advocacy work. I'm, I'm excited to be a part of the Digital Equity Coalition as a co-founder of that. So that here in California, we're working towards bridging the digital divide, which we know it was a long-standing issue even before the pandemic. Students' ability to do things like homework or research at home. But now really the pandemic has exacerbated the issue and the need. And so even looking up beyond, learning, how do you look up where the nearest COVID-19 testing site is? How do you access the free meals that we're providing as a school district? So all of those things you need technology for. And so we've been able to work to really advocate at the local level, the county and city level, to be able to get them to commit to $15.3 million, which went directly towards 15,000 devices and hotspots, so the internet connection, to help students access learning.
Wow. Could you tell us a little more about that coalition, and do those type of coalition exist in other part of California or the United States?
Yeah, so that really came out of the need. It was March, and I was looking at my fellow school board leaders and educators and asking, what are your districts doing? How are we going to manage this? We don't know how long this is going to last. California has had some spikes in cases, and so really the concept of going back to learning in person or returning to any sense of normality, it was difficult to envision. And so it was really a matter of, okay, who can we partner with to identify where these resources are. And so we wrote letters, we spoke at these city council meetings and county board of supervisors meeting, asking them to really make the commitment to support residents. And so that coalition is now expanding. We're currently expanding to across the state of California. And so working with the California School Board Association to address the needs in rural areas, which is also very difficult because the internet connectivity and availability is also sparse in those areas. And there are other states who are doing this work as well, in the city of Baltimore, Maryland. So, everyone is really just figuring out how they can step up to make sure that students and their families have access to the resources they need through technology and internet. In this day and age, it's an absolute living essential.
I wonder how in the world where more than 1 billion people live under $1 a day, how they're dealing with their educational needs, where Wi-Fi and hotspots and computers and devices are not available. You're watching Muslim Network TV. This is Imam Malik Mujahid, and we're talking with Maimona Berta and Rola, El-Roz, and we'll be right back after these messages. Welcome back to Muslim Network TV. This is Imam Malik Mujahid talking with Maimona Berta and Rola, El-Roz. Tell us if anyone of you have any idea about the chronic problem of shortage of teachers. It seems not many people are opting for this profession. So do you have this problem where you live, or this is a problem in other areas?
For us, we never had that problem until the pandemic hit. The Ontario College of Teachers sent out an email claims indicating how there's a shortage at the moment, which has never happened in like years. And I would say this shortage has happened due to the challenges some families are facing. Some of them have high-risk people at home. They don't want to risk going into schools. Some of them are high risk themselves, and a lot of them are just afraid of the whole pandemic. They don't want to, they're worried that they catch something from the students. And in that email, they indicated that, the students need you, we need you, you need to step up. And even though we understand that as teachers, sometimes your situation doesn't allow it. And a lot of teachers have opted for, in our case, they've opted for online teaching, the virtual schools. However, the in-person schools have a shortage of teachers. And I was told about a school that they had to email the parents to see which parent would step up as a supply teacher to cover some teachers. And I'm not blaming any teachers yet. We're not blaming the board. It's just the situation has been very difficult for everyone. And schools have been understanding. If a teacher requires a leave, they provide it. If they don't want to come into work, they're not letting them go. They're unionized, they're covered, they're protected. However, for those teachers who are able to go in, they've been stepping up and taking that responsibility.
Yeah, but that's Canada. In Canada, teachers are, to my knowledge, better paid and better organized and have lots of opportunities. But Maimona, how do you compare? Do you have any idea of teachers in Canada as compared to teachers in USA?
Well, I don't know too much about Canada, so I'll leave that up to Rola to speak on Canada. But I do know here in California, we have, quite a significant constant teacher shortage. And I know from the pandemic, that's just getting worse. When you have people who are underpaid and overworked, it's this system that, is just constantly festering. And so figuring out how do we make this a sustainable career for teachers. It's part of the work that I do, as part of the teachers union, to kind of negotiate the circumstances and figure out, still in the best interest of students, how are we also protecting, the rights of teachers as essential workers.
Are
So
teachers are unionized in the U.S.? Are they unionized in the States?
Yes,
but not
in a
as
lot of areas.
not
Okay.
as strongly as in Canada. Here we have unions, and I'm big supporter of teachers union, and I get invited to speak there, but not as strong as you have. You have a way better organized system, and I think teachers in Canada are paid more and get more breaks than teachers in the United States. But why? What can be done? I mean, you have some level of conflict of interest, Maimona. You're a member of the teachers union, but you're also sit on the board where with whom teachers union have to negotiate, don't you think?
So I should probably clarify. So I serve on the school board in the neighboring district of where I teach. So I'm not negotiating my own contract. No.
Okay, so there are different school boards involved here. Yeah, I just thought, how you navigate that. So you probably have to declare that there is a conflict of interest somewhere.
Yeah.
Okay, so why? What changes can be made? I mean, right now, I was looking this morning. There are 19 million people who are jobless in America right now, and as compared to 6 million who are jobless in March. Well, 6.5 or something like that. So people are looking for jobs. What America should do to make teaching a profession people love to enter?
I think it has to go back to the sustainability. It's an incredibly rewarding career, but it's also incredibly taxing. And, particularly during this pandemic, I think it's bringing to light a lot of the longstanding issues is of teachers being asked to give and give and give and not really seeing that the appreciation or the value for the work that they're doing. It reminds me of things, there's a lot of conversation right now of when schools are going to reopen in person. And for me, that's a very difficult decision because on one hand, I see the impact that it's having on kids, and not everyone, even with the devices and the resources, they're not still fully able to engage at the same level. So I see that impact on their learning. But at the same time, I'm thinking about the health and safety first and foremost of students, their families, and then the teachers and the staff. We just had our school health office assistant who passed away from COVID, her and her husband. And so that's a very stark reality that, all of these things come with risks. And, what is the path to take? What is the decision to make? I think that's still to be determined at the moment, but it's definitely front and center. And I think that contributes to a lot of, individuals' hesitation to pursue teaching, as if you're asked to be seen as the martyr. I don't know how many people are going to actually, consider that. Yes, we're essential workers. Yes, we know teaching and learning is absolutely necessary, but what are the costs? So I think it's balancing and figuring out the right balance and the right approach to figuring out a system that works to the best that we can.
Well, New York has opened up for the schools, but yesterday the mayor announced 20 hotspots, and they have shut down all the schools and all restaurants and things like that. So this is going to be, it seems, the way learning is going to be. And I mean, in Silicon Valley, you have Khan Academy, which is online and does a whole lot of work. So online learning for higher classes was already moving on, and Khan Academy, even younger classes, people were learning through that. So learning online seems to be going to be with us for a while. But how teachers who are trained to teach in the classroom, how they're being retooled at this moment to teach online effectively. At Sound Vision, which runs Muslim Network TV, we announced on a 3-4 day notice how to teach effectively online. I'm talking in April. And 500 teachers showed up for that workshop. So there is a tremendous amount of need. I asked my grandchildren, how they are doing in terms of online learning, and they simply don't like it. And some of them say that, teachers don't know how to teach and things of this nature. So the whole area of relearning how to teach online effectively, what is being done in that area, or teachers are left on their own?
Over here in Canada, depending on the schools. So I know a lot of private schools are providing training for the teachers. Some of them signed up with Sound Vision's training sessions. They try to bring in someone who can teach them how to work with Zoom, how to work with online tools, and then also how to switch from an engaging lesson plan in person to an engaging lesson plan online. And in terms of public schools, they're also providing them a lot of support. They give you training online. However, for example, if you're a supply teacher coming in to cover another teacher, you're on your own. And those are the words we heard, right? They tell you, okay, figure it out on your own. You don't even know what program you're going to be using. Once you get into the school, they tell you, open your laptop. This is the program you'll use. And if you're doing virtual, you're in isolation. You're in a classroom and figure it out on your own. So I understand why kids might be frustrated, that teachers don't know what they're doing, because teachers were not trained, and it's not fair for both sides. So I would say that there needs to be more training sessions going on from those who have been teaching online before the pandemic. So as you mentioned, there's Khan Academy, there's other trainings for the elderly that have been, the elder students that have been present before. So possibly those people can come in and train the other teachers how to do this kind of stuff. It's very challenging for everyone, and also how to make it fun, because the kids just fall asleep. They can't sit on a computer for 4 to 5 hours. They can sit playing games, yes, but they can't sit there and listen to their teacher speak. You lose them eventually. So I would say they just require a little bit more training and support from their boards, from the administration, to get that type of training.
So Maimona, how is it here? Teaching teachers to teach effectively through online means?
Well, I would say we're getting a little more prepared than March, when it was decided that schools were closing, and literally a couple hours later in the day we found out, a couple days later, that it was going to be for the rest of the school year. So I feel like we certainly feel a little better prepared from the sudden abrupt end to the school year in March. But in terms of this year, we're still building the plane as we fly it. This is all new. And so even teaching for 8 years, it's so much of the instruction, the strategies, and the approach is being adapted. And so a lot of it is by trial and error. And it is, I would say, equally frustrating for teachers, for the students, and for the parents who are at home trying to support them with accessing the learning.
So I have a question that how you mentioned that, Maimona, that 98% attendance in the board where you serve as a vice president. But what is the attention level of those students who are attending? I mean, signing in one thing, but they are remote. What are the new ways of disciplining? What are the new ways of keeping an eye that they are there throughout? I mean, we offer some online classes, and we see attendance varies, every 15 minutes, and we're keeping an eye that what is the peak time when main thing need to be told. So how are people handling?
Well, I think they're using a variety of different strategies right now, looking at reports from the Zoom meeting, seeing exactly when students log in, when they log off is one thing, to track, the number of minutes and whether they're in the Zoom itself or the platform. The other thing is the responsiveness of students, right? So if I'm calling on a student and for some reason their camera's off and they're not responding, how are we reaching out to the students at that point? What is the level of engagement happening there? So everything from making sure that their camera is on, to the muting and unmuting, to responding perhaps in the chat. Those are all things that we're looking at. And then certainly the communication with home, right? If a student is is not even showing up or not engaging in any of the, we call it the asynchronous work, which is basically the independent work that might get posted to an online learning platform. How are we monitoring their progress and what they're actually completing and able to do? And also the loss of learning. That's something here in the state of California, the governor has asked teachers to track as their participation, as well as the potential loss of learning over the course of the year and over the course of, this pandemic, really.
So how principals are keeping an eye on teachers?
So we've had, it's similar to when we're teaching in person, but the principals do drop into the virtual lessons, seeing what teachers are reporting. We have different trackers to show what the live instruction will be like, as well as what the asynchronous work or the independent work is going to look like. And so having an idea of what those lesson plans are and how we're differentiating them, to the best that we can, to meet the needs of different students is also things that are still currently happening.
Well, teaching online, meaning at least the bathroom break should be more often and easier.
I would say so, a little bit.
Because I was surprised when Google told me that that's one reason teachers quit, because there's not enough break and there's not enough bathroom. I say, what in the world is that? And it also says when they go to use students' bathrooms, there are always some problem they end up dealing with instead of taking care of themselves. So are teachers putting less hours now because of they are teaching from home?
I wouldn't say so. I've definitely been putting in more hours because I'm learning how to do new things. I'm working a new system. I'm figuring out not just what works for me, but what works for my students and what works for their families. A lot of my students their parents are essential workers, so they're working all hours of the day. It can be very difficult to contact at times. My students have my phone number, my email. I'm getting calls and text messages at all hours of the day, because at some point, some students I'm just trying to get a hold of. And so if they're calling me at 9 p.m. at night, I'm going to answer because I've been trying to reach them for a week. So I would say it's definitely been more hours, at least for me personally.
Wow, your students have your personal phone number?
Well, a Google Voice number, but it's still connected to my phone.
So is that the new thing? Is everyone doing that?
Not necessarily, no, I wouldn't say so.
That's extraordinary. So that means that just like children keep their own time clock, late night and all that, they probably will be contacting in all hours of the day or in the evening also. So more interaction with the students then.
In different capacities.
Yeah.
It's all online though. It's all interaction, but more online right now. So it's a little harder to communicate with them. And I find that the interaction you'd have to, when it comes to elementary, you would have to get the permission from the parents first. If you wanted to speak to a student, as opposed to in class, you would just speak to them outside or on the side. You can easily do that. Online, you'd have to get the permission first to be able to interact with that student.
That's Canada, or is the same thing in USA?
I know it's in Canada. I'm not sure.
So we definitely have privacy and security laws, particularly with children. And then especially in some of these specialized services like speech or specialized academic instruction for special education. So there are, forms and consent that we have to also obtain from the parent.
Well, thank you so much. You both have been great. I developed new insight. But last question, yes or no? Okay, the first with Maimona, do you feel respected as a teacher?
I do in a lot of capacities. I know that's not the full answer that, I would even want for myself, but I would say I do feel the love. I feel the love for my students. I feel that the empathy and compassion from the families and from the community. And seeing my students, I just had one the other day from my first year of teaching who had messaged me and invited me to his graduation and told me, hey, I want to become a special education teacher. I just enrolled in college. And so those are the moments that I really cherish and value, that tell me, yes, I'm valued.
So, Rola, a little different question for you. Did you feel respected all day Friday?
Friday?
Yeah, last Friday.
I would say usually by my students, yes.
Okay.
When it comes to parents, those are sometimes you get the disrespect more from the student than the parents, from the parents than the teachers, and what I've experienced. The students, you can earn their respect while with them in the class. It's harder to build that relationship with the parents at times, so they don't know much about you.
Well, thank you so much, Rola El-Roz. Rola El-Roz became a teacher after facing a racist comment. That's turning something wrong, something evil into something good, and she's planning to open her own Islamic school. And Maimona Afzal Berta, she's a special education teacher and a board vice president in California. Thank you so much for being with us. Truly appreciate that. And appreciate and thank to Sherdil Khan and Dr. Abdul Wahid for producing today's show. This is Imam Malik Mujahid, and you're watching Muslim Network TV on Galaxy 19 satellite, Apple TV, Amazon Fire TV, Roku, and our own website, muslimnetwork.tv. Peace and salam.